Eskom wants to stop private companies from solving our energy problems. The electricity minister shows us how much he loves coal, and another ship solution proposed to solve our energy problems. My name is Shani Lachman. Welcome to my channel. Okay, let's get right into it. Firstly, there was an article by the Daily Maverick, and this article was basically Eskom, an article about Eskom trying to stop the residents of a municipality. The municipality is called Mafube, and it's in the Free State. And this municipality basically is doing what we call voiding, and this is using alternative energy to avoid power cuts. And so what has happened is that in Mafube, in this municipality, they have this really large installation of solar power. And even their grid, their local network is managed by a company called RFS. It's a private company, and it's basically this public-private partnership. So the municipality has given over the operation of the network to this private company, and combined with this large installation, this large solar installation, they have managed to reduce load shedding significantly. And so Eskom is not happy with this, and in fact there is a court case going on between Eskom and this company RFS, and it seems like also the municipality as well. And basically Eskom wants to shut down this entire operation and not allow them to do this voiding. Again, voiding is using alternative energy to supply the energy deficits. When Eskom doesn't have power, you can use, when Eskom is load shedding, you can use alternative energy to supply that lack, and so that area, that municipality doesn't get load shed. Obviously not all the time, but to a great deal, they've managed to significantly reduce load shedding. And this whole thing is quite absurd. It's a bit crazy. It's a bit crazy that Eskom is in a situation where the generation capacity is not enough. Several of Eskom's power stations or units at power stations have gone down, either for maintenance or there's been issues. And instead of working with this municipality, or rather this private company, instead of working with them and accepting this additional power, this additional generation capacity that's on the grid, instead of working with them, Eskom is fighting with them and trying to shut them down. And the reasons that they're providing are quite nonsensical, and the reasons that they're giving they don't make any sense. And the solutions also to some of the questions that Eskom has are actually quite simple. Eskom's main argument is that that with this municipality doing this, with them voiding, with them supplying the lack of generation capacity with alternative energy, they are saying that this municipality is setting a precedent. And if more and more municipalities do this, the grid would become more and more unmanageable. And this would then also lead to, Eskom says, it will also lead to national blackout. Getting to the point where the entire country just shuts down, and then also it would take a couple of weeks to start the country back up. In terms of the power system. So the power system would fail, kind of like what would happen at your house if the electricity trips. You have to go to the power switch and switch it back, or the distribution box, and switch it back on again. In our case, if our entire energy system goes down, what would happen is all these power stations need to be restarted back up, and it would take not just it wouldn't take the 5 minutes or the 5 seconds that it takes to switch back on in your distribution board. It would take a couple of weeks to get everything started back up. And so Eskom is saying that RFS doing this, Mafube, the municipality doing this, is putting the country at risk of a national blackout if more and more municipalities do the same thing. And again, it's really crazy. If more municipalities follow suit, what would happen is there would be more generation capacity online, and this would ease our power constraints. So more generation would actually help the power system rather than be a threat to it. And again, why it doesn't make sense that Eskom would be stopping new generation capacity from coming online. It's really crazy. And you want us to wonder what do they think is the alternative? Is the alternative that we should wait another 15 years for another Medupi or Kusile? It's just crazy. And when it comes to a national blackout, there are so many measures in place already, or measures that could be put in place to prevent a national blackout. Firstly, this municipality could be isolated from the main grid. You could have a situation where when they are being load shed, they can be isolated from the grid, such that in that time when they're being load shed, they can have their municipality being supplied by their large solar installation and supply all their electricity needs. And then when the sun goes down and they don't have that capacity anymore, they could then even if the sun goes down and now they require all this or their demand increases, they could then be isolated. And if they're isolated, there wouldn't be a situation where there's this big surge in demand that it affects the entire power system. So isolation is the first step. And Eskom can isolate this municipality. It could isolate every other municipality that decides to do the same thing, such that when there is this surge or when there is an increase in demand again due to the sun perhaps going down, they're isolated, and then they would then have to self-load shed. Also, there could be a direct communication link between the municipality and Eskom, such that when the municipality is aware that the sun is going down or there's a cloud cover happening, they could inform Eskom that the demand is going to be increasing and that they would need capacity, and then Eskom would be prepared for that and either supply their need, or Eskom can decide to load shed them. So then this communication link would also prevent a national blackout. And with our forecasting technologies at the moment, we know what the sun is going to be doing. We know we can forecast if there's going to be cloud cover, and so this makes this communication very easy. And Eskom can know, and this municipality can know when their demand will be increasing. Then there's also the possibility of automatic load shedding. Eskom already has this solution in place. Eskom already has this measure in place whereby if the demand surges, in the entire country, if the demand surges or rises up very quickly, there are places, there are areas, there are customers that Eskom automatically would load shed such that a national blackout is prevented. And so this automatic load shedding could even be implemented at a municipality level. Eskom could look at a municipality and say, because you've decided to void, or because you have this large installation that's supplying you power during times of load shedding, if your demand increases too quickly, we will automatically load shed you. And there's nothing wrong with that. This also would prevent a national blackout. And then, of course, this municipality and RFS, they've decided that in the future, or in the near future, they're going to be implementing battery storage and perhaps even flexible generation. And if more municipalities do that as well, it also makes the automatic load shedding and this case of quick rise in demand, it would also make that very rare. So, this idea that the grid will become unmanageable, it's really absurd coming from Eskom. And Eskom should really stop complaining that renewables is going to make the grid unmanageable. Instead, what they should do is welcome the new generation capacity and then put measures in place that would make the grid more manageable. I mean, the alternative again is another Medupi, another Kusile, and another Koeberg. And that would take years. It would take at least 10 years, maybe even 15 years to get those things up and running. And so Eskom should stop dreaming about those things and allow, what's happening in the private sector, allow that to continue so that more generation capacity can come online without being hindered. And then Eskom should be focusing on building capacity to support the renewables. They should focusing on putting in flexible generation capacity, things like gas. They should also look at storage, pump storage being one of them, hydrogen storage being another one, battery power as well. And they should also look at implementing grid stabilizing technologies, synchronous compensators, things that will make the grid stable in the event where we have lots of renewables online. So again, instead of dreaming of a another generation, another coal-fired power station or another nuclear power station, Eskom should focus on building flexible generation, focus on increasing our energy storage, and they should also focus on grid stabilizing technology. So, again, new generation is a good thing. It's not a bad thing, and Eskom should not fight this. Eskom has been incapable of supplying the country's generation needs or energy needs, and IPPs have shown themselves, independent power producers have shown themselves capable of mobilizing generation capacity very quickly. And so what Eskom has been incapable of doing, IPPs have been capable of doing, and Eskom should just take a step back, allow them to do their thing, and focus on building the infrastructure that's needed to manage the addition of renewable energy. Eskom should focus on becoming a transmission system operator, and that would help. It would really help us all. Okay, and then a couple of weeks back, the new electricity minister, Minister Ramokgopa, he did a tour of all the Eskom power plants, and he gave a talk a couple of weeks back, basically giving a report on his visit to all these power stations. So, in general, I watched the entire address, the entire talk, and in general, I feel that the electricity minister at least has a good idea as to what the power station or what the power system looks like, and he perhaps has a generally good idea as to what needs to happen for us to get out of the crisis that we're in. But there were a few statements that the minister made that I feel need to be corrected. Statements specifically relating to renewables. Okay, so for example, the minister said that our coal fleet. He spoke about our fleet of generation technologies or generation capacity. He said that our coal fleet is basically around Mpumalanga, and he said then that our renewables fleet is in Northern Cape. Now, he's right in the sense that coal is situated in Mpumalanga for the most part. But when he says that renewables is in the Northern Cape, he is not completely right over there. The Northern Cape, yes, it does have a lot of solar resource. There's a lot of sun there, but not so much wind. The Northern Cape doesn't have the best wind in the country. Some of our best wind is rather at the coastline. Also, he stated that renewables come online. Well, he said that there's a morning peak from about. He said that there's a morning peak, and then he said that there's an evening peak, and he said that renewables come online after the morning peak, and they go offline before the evening peak. And so you get this idea then that the minister, when it comes to speaking about renewables, he's only speaking about, or he's referring mainly to solar power. He's not considering wind. So in South Africa, we do have good solar, we do have good sunlight, but we also have good wind. And our wind resource is even better than our solar resource. So when it comes to considering renewables, it's important for us to consider both solar and to consider wind. And we must also understand that these technologies operate very differently. While solar, as the minister says, he's correct in saying that solar comes online. He's correct in saying that solar comes online after the morning peak and it goes offline before the evening peak. He's correct in saying that. But when it comes to wind is available 24 hours a day. And, studies, our wind atlases have shown that, there are some times of low wind, but overall, the wind is always blowing somewhere in the country. And given the amount of wind resource that we have, we could run, CSIR did the study, and they've shown that we can run the country on 70% solar and wind, with wind taking up the majority or the bulk of the renewables resource. And the balance of the 70%, or the balance of the 100%, the 30% would consist of whatever is remaining of Eskom and flexible generation. Flexible generation, as I've mentioned, like gas to power, CSP. There's storage like batteries, hydrogen, pump storage. The minister then stated that we need to change our mindset of putting renewables against fossil fuels. He said that we can't be thinking renewables versus fossil fuels. We need to be thinking of both of these working together. And here again, the minister is perhaps only half right. If when he's thinking of fossil fuels, if he's thinking about coal, then he's wrong. Renewables do not work well with coal-fired power stations because coal-fired power stations are baseload power stations. They need to be run at full capacity for most of the time in order for them to be cost-effective. Renewables are variable, and to complement renewables, you need flexible generation, and these are the technologies that I've mentioned. And so renewables does not work very well with baseload coal. So it is a competition between renewables and baseload coal. But if by fossil fuels the minister meant gas or diesel, then yes, there is a possibility of renewables working with fossil fuels. So we could have renewables supplying the bulk of our energy, and then being complemented by flexible generation in the form of gas, to power, open cycle gas turbines. Okay, so again, if we're thinking of fossil fuels, coal doesn't work very well with renewables, but gas does, because gas to power is flexible generation. The minister then went on to say that in the future, in the next few years, we're going to be decommissioning about 2,000 megawatts of Eskom power. And he asked the question, how do you replace that? Basically implying that renewables is incapable of replacing that. And so he made the example of Komati Power Station, where 1,000 megawatts basically, or above, I think it was maybe 1,800 megawatts was taken offline. And this was replaced with wind, solar, and batteries, effectively giving a more or less baseload supply of about 200 megawatts. And so he's saying, man, so you're taking off 1,000 megawatts and you're replacing it with 200 megawatts. And then he asks, where's the math in that? How does that work out? And the solution, again, is very simple. If you manage to put 200 megawatts online, just do the same thing in 4 more locations. Now, it doesn't mean that we're going to be decommissioning another power plant, another Eskom power plant to put up another 4 power plants to put up another 200 megawatts at each of these power plants. We could use locations that are not previously Eskom power plants. And if you do the same thing, there's 200 megawatts in 4 more locations, that's a total of 5 locations. These projects can be run in parallel. They could each be given to different companies to run. So it's not just Eskom doing it. And with that setup, you could have this thing done. You could have that 1,000 megawatts be put up much quicker and cheaper than new coal and new nuclear. So once again, the solutions for our energy crisis are very, very simple. More solar, more wind, more flexible generation with renewables, with the solar and wind taking up the bulk of that supply. And it's very simple, these solutions, but unfortunately it's not very obvious to those who are used to baseload coal, those who have basically the entire working lives, the country has been run on baseload coal and nuclear. And it's probably for this reason that the minister, his intention rather is to seek to extend the life of some of the coal plants. A new mindset is needed to move into a system where we have mainly renewables. And if you've spent your entire life in a system where it's mainly baseload coal and nuclear, very difficult to shift mindset. Okay, and then lastly, there's a company. So MoneyWeb has this article, and in the article they are talking about a company called Rosatom or Rosatom that's offering to supply power on ships, similar to what we saw with the car power ships, the gas to power on the car power ships. And they're saying that they could supply this, but it's not going to be gas to power, it's going to be nuclear. And so they want to sell us these ships with the nuclear plants on them, and they're saying this is going to help us with our energy system. And there's a comment on the article. The comment on the article says, the more we collapse, the more dodgy solutions are offered by those that see an opportunity to further rob the taxpayer in this country. So far, the Chinese, Turks, Russians, and Indians all want their fingers in our pie. They see our leaders as corruptible, immature, and easy prey. And you read this comment and you can't help but agree with this person who made this comment. So let's look at some of the, let's look at the solution, this nuclear plant on a ship. The CEO of Rosatom, Ryan Collier, he's the CEO of Rosatom Central and Southern Africa, and he says that baseload is needed to supplement renewables. Now, unfortunately, the CEO is wrong on 2 points. And if we, to understand why he's wrong, it also helps us to understand why their product is not a good fit. So firstly, renewables is not intermittent power. Intermittent power refers to power that switches on, switches off, it's irregular, it's discontinuous, and there are these sudden changes. And unfortunately, some of our Eskom power plants are operating like that. They are more intermittent than renewables. Renewables is what we call variable power. It's ramping up and it's ramping down. It's not this quick, big chunks on and quick, big chunks off. And it's also very predictable because we can forecast what the weather is going to be doing in days to come and in hours to come. It's even predictable enough for us to be able to plan for cases of low sun and low wind. Baseload power. So the first thing that he said wrong was that renewables is intermittent. It's not, it's variable. The second thing he said that was wrong is that baseload power can supplement renewables. Baseload power cannot supplement renewables. Baseload power and renewables are not compatible. Baseload has to be, it's big chunks of power that are online for long periods or extended periods of time. What you need to supplement renewables is flexible power. Flexible power that can be ramped up and ramped down in a matter of seconds, in a matter of minutes, to account for the changes in weather. So with nuclear power, it's long startup and long shutdown procedures, and in order for nuclear to be cost effective, it's power that needs to be staying online for long periods of time. So nuclear is good as a base load solution, but nuclear is definitely not good as a supplement or a support for renewables. So the article also makes mention that Rosatom is saying that nuclear is well priced. So basically South Africa can get nuclear at a good price. And they're also saying that it will be a good hedge against a risk of increasing gas prices. So I would agree that nuclear is cheaper than gas, but in South Africa, because of our brilliant sun and because of our brilliant wind, nuclear is not cheaper than renewables. Renewables is about 40% cheaper than nuclear. And if we were to use gas to complement the renewables, we would only need about 10%. We'd only need about 10% of our power coming from gas. And so, in such small amounts, the price of gas would be, is not very relevant. What's more important is the price of our bulk supply. And if our bulk supply is on cheap renewables, which is, as I mentioned, 40% cheaper than nuclear, it's even 40% cheaper than coal. If the bulk of our energy is being supplied by cheap renewables, then the price of gas doesn't really matter. And in addition to renewables being quicker to mobilize, in addition to renewables being cheaper, it's also much quicker to mobilize, even than these Rosatom nuclear plants on ships. And so, bottom line, look, we need to choose, as a country, we need to choose between renewables and baseload. We can't have both because the two technologies don't complement each other. But in addition to that, okay, so I've mentioned that renewables is much cheaper and it's much quicker. And in addition to that, we need to understand that we can't be dictated to by foreigners who want to sell us products. Every now and then, there's a foreign company, foreign country that comes along and they want to sell us products. They want to tell us how their product will be so good for our energy system. We need to look at our energy system, decide what's the best, and then implement that. And right now, because renewables is the cheapest, and because renewables is quick to mobilize, that needs to be the bulk of our energy system.